ships which are carrying fuel and headed for Venezuela. The letter says that today, as part of its maximum pressure campaign, the United States is threatening those 5 Iranian tanker ships whose fuel headed for Venezuela would serve to alleviate the country's fuel shortage. If the provocations and threats of the United States materialize, it says, an act of war established in international law, such action does not only constitute a warlike military aggression against an Iranian merchant ship, but also against the Venezuelan people. Venezuela has insisted that the Security Council urgently adopt measures to put an immediate end to the warlike policies of the United States in order to avoid the escalation of tensions which endangers the peace, security, and stability of the region. According to the Venezuelan government, Colombia is serving as a center of operations for mercenaries and for the development of terrorist plots.
We met with Captain Antonio Sequea in the city of Bogota, and he proposed a military operation that was being organized by the U.S. government, led by President Donald Trump.
Testimony provided by the mercenaries point to having been trained by paramilitary groups in Colombia's Riohacha and Guajira regions.
To meet Venezuelans in Colombia, train them, and come with them to Venezuela to secure Caracas and secure an airport here.
En territorio de Colombia para agredir.
Since September 2019, Venezuela has publicly denounced the existence of these paramilitary camps, revealing their locations and exposing the link between those behind the plots and Colombian drug traffickers.
Armed groups are being trained in northern Colombia, joining forces with drug traffickers, the same illicit business the Colombian government allegedly battles, the same traffickers that the DEA is pursuing under the many operations announced by President Donald Trump. Well, it seems their plans have not only failed to hurt drug traffickers, but have actually strengthened powerful criminal gangs that control northern Colombia.
It took 8 months for the Colombian government to respond, although they only addressed those who leaked the information.
We're doubling down on mechanisms within the public institutions to identify any wrongdoing by public servants who may be working for dictatorial regimes in the region.
For Caracas, this confirms Colombia's involvement in Operation Gideon. Their plan commenced when they called on Venezuelan soldiers to desert the military over a year ago.
What you are doing will undoubtedly generate a domino effect in your country. What you are doing is very brave.
That same day, opposition figure Juan Guaido congratulated the deserters that would supposedly fill the ranks of an armed invasion into Venezuela.
Congratulations for standing by the Constitution.
This former Venezuelan soldier had publicly deserted the military hours before driving an armored truck through a border crossing, running over at least 2 people. He is one of the mercenaries captured during the foiling of Operation Gideon.
The Venezuelan Supreme Court of Justice, through its constitutional chamber, has ruled in favor of an appeal for judicial protection presented by several citizens after DirecTV cut off all services to Venezuela, affecting millions of viewers. The sentence, read on Friday by National Constituent Assembly member Maria Alejandra Diaz, rules that the broadcast signal of the transnational TV platform should be put back on the airwave as soon as possible. The decision states that DirecTV operates with a concession from the Venezuelan state, and for that reason, it must respect the Constitution and national laws, as well as its contract. The judges declared false the argument that DirecTV was unable to fulfill its obligations under Venezuelan law, since these are provisions that date from 2005, and the company had been complying with them for 15 years. In Brazil, the Supreme Court has released a video of President Jair Bolsonaro in which he speaks about the ease of implementing a dictatorship in the country. Brian Muir has the story.
A political scandal is sweeping across Brazil today, which started this morning when Supreme Court Minister Celso de Mello issued an order for the federal police to seize far-right President Jair Bolsonaro and his son Carlos' cell phones. Immediately after this order of seizure was issued, the president's institutional security chief, retired General Augusto Helena, released a public letter threatening the Supreme Court. After Helena released the letter, the Supreme Court released an entire 2-hour-long video of a cabinet meeting from April 22nd to all of the Brazilian television networks. President Bolsonaro says that if the left takes control of the country in 2022 elections, half of his cabinet will be arrested for homophobia. His environmental minister says, let's deregulate the entire environmental sector while people are not paying attention because of the coronavirus crisis. His finance minister, Paulo Guedes, says that they should just forget about small business owners during the economic crisis caused by the pandemic and only focus on the rich. And most damning of all, President Bolsonaro admits to changing personnel in the federal police to protect his son from criminal investigations. So it's hard to say right now what is going to come out of it. It's going to take days for analysts to unpack every impropriety that was detailed in this long meeting. But it's damaged the president's image even further. His popularity has dropped from 39% to 25% in the last 4 months. And it's the hope of the 7 left political parties that submitted a collective impeachment request yesterday to Congress that this will continue to drop below 20%. At that point, there will be political will in Congress to impeach the president.
The government of Argentina has extended debt restructuring talks with international creditors until June the 2nd. This is the second extension of the debt restructuring talks by the South American nation. The government of President Alberto Fernandez has been working to restructure the payments of massive debt accrued by the previous administration of Mauricio Macri to the cost of tens of billions of dollars.
We will not tie Argentina to new commitments that we cannot fulfill. I want the world to see us as an honorable country that fulfills its commitments. And therefore, we will do no more than what we must do, so that the commitments we make to our creditors do not mean a further neglect of our people.
In Bolivia, the High Command of the military entered the legislature to make its demands. More on this report from Telesur's team in La Paz. Members of the military high command of the armed forces entered the Legislative Assembly in battle gear to give an ultimatum and to threaten the senators to whom they gave a 1-week deadline to approve the promotions for the top tier of the armed forces and of the Air Force. This is General Sergio Orellana, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
As an institution, we're going to wait till next week for the Assembly to pronounce itself and to ratify the promotions within the armed forces. If we receive a negative response, we will proceed as our rules establish and under the regulations and the organic law of the armed forces of the state, that the entity that approves the promotions is the Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces.
The military chief said that the commander-in-chief is the entity that approves the promotions and that the Senate should only ratify the military's decision. The military leader also demanded that the country's legislators respect that institution. We continue with General Sergio Orellana.
And I feel that the Plurinational Assembly is not working with consideration and respect for the armed forces. We as an institution deserve respect, and we will demand respect from the Plurinational Assembly. We simply ask that the members of the Assembly fulfill their function, that they do their job.
The president of the Senate, Eva Copa, condemned as irregular the presence of military in battle gear inside of the legislature, since any visit of the military high command should be coordinated in writing. She explained that the issue of the promotions is discussed with the executive body and not with the heads of the armed forces. So the letter brought by the military high command will be forwarded to a commission. They will wait for the official response of the executive to the issues raised last Monday and have warned that they will not work under coercion.
We are not going to work under threats or ultimatums. This assembly was democratically elected by the Bolivians, and we will comply with the country's constitution.
It was just this past November in which the armed forces and the police played an integral role in the ousting of the government of President Evo Morales. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. St. Kitts and Nevis, as it prepares for the general elections on June the 5th, the chief medical officer is warning the public to remain cognizant of the novel coronavirus.
I sense that we are beginning to lapse into a state of complacency with regards to this pandemic. And as we move into the general elections, it's important for us to realize that this pandemic has not gone away, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Haiti has recorded 3 additional deaths due to the COVID-19, along with 71 new cases. This takes the number of confirmed positives to 734. According to the Ministry of Health, there are 688 active cases, 21 people have recovered, and 25 have died in total. The authority is once again pleading with citizens to abide by their social distancing and maintain hygienic practices to stem the spread of the virus. In the Bahamas, prospective family members have attended a remembrance service in Abaco to bury 55 unidentified people who died due to Hurricane Dorian on the island. This ceremony is being held amid coronavirus pandemic as the Atlantic hurricane season is 9 days away. The powerful 184 remain missing.
Actually, we knew and we were expecting.
St. Lucia is mourning the death of cultural giant Joyce August, whose body was discovered at her home on Thursday. The 76-year-old is a pioneer of St. Lucian folk music, founding the Juanora Voices that champion and was awarded Sportswoman of the Year in 1969. In 2000, August was named in the OECS list of outstanding women in the 20th century. Meanwhile, she was bestowed the singular honor. Hair salons and retail stores will reopen under curfew next Tuesday, operating under reduced capacity and strict hygienic measures. All people will be required to wear a mask when outside or inside of a business, regardless of what they're doing.
The reopening of lounges and dining rooms in restaurants is authorized as long as we stayed open and working so that the public would see us, but the impact has been hard. We have been able to continue paying the employees, but the customer flow has been very poor. We recently had a slight increase in sales, but the impact has been significant.
Canada does not deserve a seat on the UN Security Council. That's what a new petition by the Canadian Foreign Policy as a number of organizations which are fighting against the displacement and crimes which are committed under transnational extractivist operations, which are headquartered in Canada but which are seen all over the world. The petition will be delivered to UN member states prior to the vote for the Security Council seat in June.
We look forward, very much forward, I must say, to many more to come.
And Prime Minister Trudeau was asked about Canada's bid during one of his daily COVID-19 press briefings earlier this week.
Well, I don't think there's any real division on that. I think all Canadians want Canada to have a strong and reasonable voice on the international scene, and that's what we're always seeking to have. The Security Council of the United Nations is one means of ensuring that our values are shared and that we can push for more cooperation between countries and more multilateralism. And we can do that with a seat at the UN Security Council. But it is one way of pursuing our engagement with the rest of the world and not an end in itself.
We'll take one last short break. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Botswana is continuing to scale down some of its lockdowns, recorded 29 COVID-19 cases, including 1 death. And though the national lockdown has ended, some measures remain in place, including the prohibition of movement between regions.
many people are suffering because of coronavirus because they are not moving. They are just staying, and others were living like they were exercising. So nowadays they no longer do that.
This COVID-19, it had a lot of drawbacks on my farm. I had no opportunity to go and buy my feedstuffs for my livestock there. So
millions around the world marked International Quds Day on Friday. Palestinians and those in solidarity with the cause calling for the freedom and the return of the free nation of Palestine are replacing street rallies with online events, and they've also celebrated within their vehicles amid the coronavirus pandemic. Al-Quds being the Arabic name for Jerusalem, the event usually takes place on the last Friday in the month of Ramadan and was introduced by Iran's founder Ayatollah Khamenei following the Iranian Revolution in 1979. In an address marking the event, Iran's supreme leader called Israel a cancerous tumor that, quote, will undoubtedly be uprooted and destroyed. This as he likened the Zionist regime to COVID-19.
The US and Western countries equipped this fake and occupying regime with various kinds of military and non-military tools of power, even with atomic weapons. Some regional countries justify their ugly behavior and argue that the Zionist regime is a reality in the region, without realizing that deadly and detrimental realities must be fought with and destroyed. Today, the coronavirus is a reality, and the whole intelligent people consider fighting it a must. The long-lasting Zionism virus will definitely not survive for long from now on.
Iran's foreign minister said that it's the day for the revival of Palestinian rights, calling Israel the largest human rights violator and holder of nuclear weapons in the region, as well as the most serious chronic threat to international peace and security. Minister Zarif went on to say that the conspiracy of the racial deal of the century proves that Washington is a partner to the Israeli aggressor. Syria and Iran also ratified their support for the fight of the Palestinian people against Israel. Amid the pandemic, Iran participated in a virtual act for the International Al-Quds Day, which was held at its embassy in Syria, and in which they ratified their position in defending Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Palestine. They also reject the expansionist plans of Israel, supported by the United States.
The enemy thinks that because of the pandemic we weren't going to celebrate Al-Quds, but this year, in defiance of the expansionist plans of the Zionist entity, we have organized this video conference activity, and the celebration will be much more effective internationally.
We ratify your firm posture before the aggressive colonialist expansionist doctrine of the usurper Zionist entity, and we will unmask the truth of behind the Israeli occupier before the entire world. And we are sure that the triumph and that the definitive victory will soon be reached.
At the same time, a solidarity meeting with the Palestinian people was held outside of Damascus. Participants ratified their rejection to the so-called deal of the century and condemned plans by Tel Aviv to annex more Palestinian land.
We advocate for the unity of the Palestinian people, the Arab Palestinian resistance movements.
We celebrate this date a few days after commemorating the Palestinian Nakba or catastrophe, which today they want to continue their chapters through the annexation of more Palestinian lands by the hands of Zionist coalition of Netanyahu and Gantz under the so-called deal of the century promoted by US President Trump.
This year's commemoration of Al-Quds Day occurs at a time in which Israel, supported by the United States, began the implementation of the deal of the century, as it's called, by declaring Jerusalem as its capital, and with the annexation of the occupied West Bank, the Jordan Valley, and the north of the Dead Sea. An expansionist plan that Syria and Iran will, despite all of the pressures of Washington against them, confront with unconditional support for the Palestinian people until the liberation of all occupied territories. Jordan's Prime Minister Omar Razaz said the Arab nation will not accept any unilateral Israeli moves to annex the Jordan Valley and Palestinian territories. Razaz said the world would be a witness to an apartheid state if Israel moved forward with its plans.
The words of His Majesty the King were very clear. We will not accept the annexation of Palestinian lands, and based on that, we would reconsider our relationship with Israel in all its dimensions. We don't want to rush, we don't want to anticipate things, but continuously His Majesty holds the countries of the world responsible for this matter. God forbid that the world witnesses an apartheid state.
The children of slain Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi have pardoned his murderers. Khashoggi's eldest son, Salah, tweeted about the decision on the last night of Ramadan. According to Saudi law, a pardon from a son of a murder victim serves as a legal reprieve. The move spares 5 government forces from the death penalty 2 years after their conviction. 11 people in total were charged for the murder, which occurred at a Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, in October 2018. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has denied ordering the killing. Cyclone Amphan has killed at least 25 people and has caused extensive damage in Bangladesh. Officials in West Bengal and Bangladesh say that they were currently trying to assess the extent of loss and damage, especially in Sundarban's mangrove forest, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, about which information was still trickling in. Some 10 million people were affected and some 500,000 people may have lost their homes. A passenger plane belonging to state-run Pakistani International Airlines has crashed near the southern port city of Karachi. The aircraft arriving from the eastern city of Lahore was carrying 99 passengers and 8 crew members, according to the spokesman for the country's Civil Aviation Authority. The accident left at least 8 dead and 15 injured. The residential area on the edge of the airport, known as Model Colony, is a poor community and is heavily congested. We've reached the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telestarenglish.net. And join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestar English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thank you for watching.